Hey guys, this is Toby Mathis with the Anderson Business Advisors podcast. And today I got a very interesting topic that I really want people to pay attention to, because I think it's something that's critical in this country and that you're going to learn about and you're going to realize how critical it is and how it's not going away unless we do something about it. And there's lots of opportunities, as in all things, where there's something that we need to address as a country. There's usually money to be made in it, as well as you can always do really good things by helping those folks. So I'm going to introduce Diane Lawson and Jim Richardson. Jim, who's been a client for a long time. Diane, we've worked with, sit on a board with these two. But I would like to introduce them and let them tell their stories a little bit. Let's do ladies first. Diane, what's your background? What are we going to be talking about today?
So today we're going to be talking about neurodiverse, inclusive co-housing in Pennsylvania for us specifically, but hopefully eventually across the country. As you mentioned, there is a terrible need. There's many people on the spectrum who need housing. I'm involved in this. My son Matthew is 27. He actually is on the spectrum. It's something I've always thought about since the time he was diagnosed. What's going to happen to Matt when I'm not around anymore? Matt, we ran into an issue which kind of made everything very clear, though. Matt and his girlfriend at the time went to apply for housing for an apartment building and were turned away, which, again, we all know is definitely discrimination, but, you don't want to get into that fight. Because what's it going to be? Eventually, he and his girlfriend would live in an apartment building where nobody wanted them. So, rather than kind of fight that one singular fight, decided to fight the bigger fight and make this a place where not only Matt and his girlfriend, but many millions of young adults like them have a place where they can go and where they can belong. So I met up with Jim, and Front Porch Cohousing is kind of the story.
Yeah, and so this is I know you guys use terms neurotypical for folks that are not spectrum, and then is it neurodiverse, or what is the term?
It's actually, I believe it's neurodivergent is
not neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, rather than isolate folks, and I'm assuming that a lot of the neurodivergent folks are staying home with mom and dad.
Yes.
Is that fair? Because they do get discriminated against, and because a lot of times people are like, hey, I don't want to have my son or daughter at risk. The way it was put to me, and I don't want to be insensitive, was I am a landlord for an organization that is a nonprofit that does this. And they said, employable, awesome, but may leave the iron on a shirt and burn the house down. Right? That sounds horrible, but they said, or leave, it's like maybe they don't turn off the stove. You need to have a little bit of a watchful eye. And of course, I imagine that's why mom and dad are saying, hey, stay home with me. Is that accurate?
It is accurate. Quite honestly, as a mom, you want to protect, right? You want to make sure that there is a bubble around your child if your child is 5 or if your child is 50. And it's a bad world out there. So I think whereas there are a lot of young adults who could be on their own, as you mentioned, with the supports in place, sometimes the parents aren't as willing to kind of push them out into the real world.
And so let me bring Jim into this, because Jim, is it the same sort of background? Because you and I know each other for quite a while, yeah. But you're in the same boat as Diane, right?
Yeah, we have our son Michael's 28, and yeah, same thing. We looked at a wonderful property in a community not far from us, and everything was fine until the folks that owned it realized that we wanted to put Michael and 2 other autistic adults in that home, and then it was like, not in my backyard. You don't. And fair housing's fair housing, but the practice of it is a very different thing. The other aspect of this, Toby, that I think bears note is that it's outrageously expensive. The cost of raising a child with autism can run into millions of dollars for their life. And, because housing is not inexpensive, because these individuals don't have the same opportunity at independent living as their neurotypical peers, they do stay at home with mom and dad, often into their 40s, 50s. And I've had parents who've had 60-year-old children, and they just haven't planned for it because they don't have the income and they don't know what to do. So there is just a massive amount of need today.
What happens if something happens to mom and dad then to these adults?
Well,
And
best case scenario is that there is somebody around who can then take up living with them, right? If there's a family member or, sibling or someone. Worst case scenario, if you take it all the way out to the worst case, it's homelessness.
Yeah.
Homeless. Yeah, my experience, and I worked at a guardianship firm. Not everybody knows my background before I was an attorney, but mental illness, number one reason that there's homelessness, in my personal opinion. But it's not mental illness when you're neurodivergent, right? You would look at that and say just different, and the punishment is perhaps
Yeah.
homelessness in a world where it should not exist. So how big an issue is this? Let's give it some context. Is this something where it's, hey, there's this small little community, or is this hundreds of thousands across the country? What are the numbers like?
It's millions. I think the latest, and we're just going to talk about adults with autism, because when you start to go beyond that and you include Down syndrome, you include TBI, you include, there's probably 10 different diagnoses under the IDD, the Intellectual Developmental Disability umbrella, which autism is one. It's millions.
Mm-hmm.
But when we bring it closer to home for us in Pennsylvania, in 2014, Pennsylvania did a study along with the census. And at that time, they projected that by 2023, there'd be over 38,000 adults in Pennsylvania with autism living at home with parents and receiving services from the state. 38,000. That's projected to go to 58,000 in 2 years by 2025 and up to 75,000 by 2030. So think about
in one state.
In,
This is just
Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania. And if you really, let's make the math easy. If it was 50,000 adults in Pennsylvania,
mm-hmm.
and 80% of them live at home, and that's the national average, live at home with mom and dad, aging parent caregivers like myself, that's 40,000 kids that potentially could be displaced or bounced from family member to family member. And that's really not what any of us want as parents. And then, Toby, if we break that down a little more, Pennsylvania is a big state. But if we look just at the counties that Diane and I are in, those numbers jump from, in the southeastern Pennsylvania, by 2025, there will be 60,000 adults in southeastern Pennsylvania, which is Philadelphia and the surrounding 6 suburbs, that are autistic and receive services, and 80% of them likely live at home with mom and dad. The numbers are staggering.
So you guys have come up with kind of a unique approach to addressing the issue. I got first acquainted with this as a landlord in Baltimore. And I was leasing. I had larger homes in one of the syndications that I was working with. Larger homes, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom. And I met an organization that would put a caregiver in there. But you guys do it a little differently, right? You're not just doing caregiver. You're actually looking and saying, it's not that different. We just need people. So maybe Diane, you can give me the thumbnail sketch of what you guys do. That's a unique proposition that's changing the face of landlording and being in helping address the issue.
Yeah. So when I started this, before I found Jim and from Porch, I went to a lot of experts because, again, as a mom, I wanted my kid behind a gate, completely insulated from everybody that could hurt him. And I went to this great organization in the Lehigh Valley called Center for Independent Living. And I was talking to the people there. And the executive director there said, that is not how you want your child to live, right? That's not a life. Behind a curtain where that's not a life. That's I don't know what it is, but it's not a life. And I really kind of took that to heart. And we have started from then, when I met Jim and Nancy, we started working together to build that inclusive community. So it's people with and without a disability living in, our first phase is co-living. They're living in a single family home. And the people who are typical, like those, my son's peers, Jim's son's peers, who's ever, live together as housemates. It is not, they're not providing care for them other than how any other, if you live together, you become a caring individual, but you are not providing care. And to that point, the individuals that will live in this house don't need extensive care right now either.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
So,
just to add on to that, about 20 years ago, Pennsylvania had institutional living, and it was bad. It was deplorable. And they've since swung the opposite way, and they really don't want uh, groups of adults with a disability living together. And nor do we as parents, because we want our children to have as normal life as
mhm.
possible, living with others that can be peer housemates. So I think this concept of neuro inclusive living is really what families are latching onto. A, they want housing for their loved one, but B, they want them to live with others who are going to support them, care for them, and care about them.
And you may already be in a situation, like, because I know that, like, there's like what they call the spectrum, but
Yeah.
there's people that are more affected than others. But it's not uncommon, I imagine, that in college and other things, people are living together anyway. And then as they get older, they realize that maybe it's more substantial and it's causing greater issues. Like your kids, are they working? Are they able to work?
Mm-hmm.
Things like
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Yep. And it's just that when a landlord comes across and somebody's doing an application, that they're either being discriminated against overtly or maybe subtly. You're just saying, "Hey, this might not be the best candidate." Or you guys have to be seeing that,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Oh yeah, all the
You
time.
work? I should just say this: you guys work with a whole bunch of families, and I want to say hundreds of families with children that are in this situation. Is that what they're all experiencing? Is that when they try to get their sons and daughters out into the community, that the community rejects them?
I wouldn't say the community necessarily, but definitely
Landlords.
landlords.
And so Toby, we ran into this 5 years ago. Michael graduated high school, and we started looking at apartments in and around our home here in Doylestown. And they would rent to me, even though they would take my money. They didn't want Michael living there by himself, even though he's capable of living 90% independently. They didn't want him there. And that's really why we created this for ourselves. And then we realized we're not the only ones who are facing this. And that just kind of snowballed from there.
And the bigger thing is, part of what we're creating is a community. It's a community of people who care about each other. And as we go through this, we're finding, we started it kind of for ourselves and then expanded it out to people with disabilities, other families. But in the real world, and there's been a whole bunch of studies recently, that typical people are experiencing an unprecedented amount of loneliness in their own lives.
Yeah.
So, it becomes like, well, what does the neurotypical get for living, with our neurodivergent adults? And it's that sense of community. Everybody needs it. Everybody wants to belong.
Are you seeing that? Because I imagine as you guys are rolling this out, and I know that you have already a property that you've put under contract and you're looking at doing this. The people that are the neurotypical, are they like, is it nurses? Is it people that are caregivers anyway? Is it older folks that maybe just want to be, they like being social. They don't want to be isolated. What do you
All of
see?
them.
Diane, what's the statistic for the most isolated or
So
loneliest demographic?
the most isolated age group right now, according to a 2022 survey, are millennials. So people between the ages of 22 to 40 are reporting unbelievable, unprecedented feelings of loneliness and not belonging.
And so your solution is, hey, let's do something that benefits society, and let's have both neurotypical and neurodivergent living together. Let's facilitate it. Let's help do it. Commendable. And just to do a quick pump real quick, it's front porch co-housing, and you're already rolling this
Yep.
out. And so first off, I'm just going to say anybody listening who wants to learn more, go to front porch co-housing. And also look at it from a landlord side. Reach out to Jim and Diane and say, especially if you're in Pennsylvania, because I think that's where you guys are
Yeah.
looking. And you guys are, if you're willing to, I know you guys have a list of people who want to be tenants. Like, how long is that list right now today?
Today it's 147 families in our immediate counties, so not even southeastern PA. In the three counties where we're focused on, Lehigh, Northampton, and Bucks, we have 147 families that have said we are absolutely looking for what you're willing to provide. And it's just now a matter of we can't do it fast enough, Toby. It's one
Mhm.
house at a time, right? It was a it took a while coming through COVID to get to this point, but we have our first property under contract. It'll be 5 bedroom home, beautiful home, 8,000 square feet. And then we're looking to do three more, one more
Mhm.
in Lehigh and two in Bucks to satisfy that immediate demand. And then move
Mhm.
to our next phase, which is co-housing, where we actually can accommodate many more families at one time than you can in a single family home.
Now I know this, that when we do residential assisted living or one of
Mhm.
those, that the average cost is so high. Like the average cost of residential assisted living, if you wanted your own room, it's over $5,000 a
Yeah.
month. What does it cost a family here to work with you guys and put somebody in a house where again, it's neurodiverse, right? So it's a combination of both. But mom and dad are looking and they say, I can't afford $5,000 a month. What would it cost them to work with you guys?
Well, the average that we're finding right now for this first property would be about $2,400 a month.
That's not
It's
bad
not
at
bad.
all.
But here's the thing, Toby. Um, Most of those parents, those 140 some parents that we're talking to today, they have not planned for what they refer to as a third retirement, right? Most families who have neurotypical children, the kids grow up, the kids go to school, the kids move out, and mom and dad go about their retirement. But for families like ours, where we have our adult children living with us today, we now have the burden of covering those expenses theoretically for
Hmm.
the rest of their adult life. So our plan is not only what do we do with them this year, next year, 5 years, but when mom or dad are gone, we have to have a plan that's going to take them through the end of their life.
And that's a really important
It
point,
is.
right? Like my I have two children. One, I have her, I don't have to plan for her longevity, right? But I plan to live for another few years, and I hope my son makes it to 70. It's a lot of years of planning that needs to happen when I'm not around to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your organization is helping put this in place. Is the state helping at all? Are there any organizations out there saying, yeah, we know this is a big issue and here we're willing to donate, devote funds, insurance, anything? Is there anybody out there helping?
No, because we are not a group home.
Yeah.
We are not a
So
residential assisted living. Like, so if we were, that would be a different story, but we are not.
So let me go over the numbers then. So if it's about $2,400 $2,500 a month
An
for
individual.
a neurodivergent, is it the same for the neurotypical? Is it the same cost, or are they paying a smaller fee? What does that look like?
Well, we think they're going to pay a smaller cost, Toby.
Mhm.
And part of that smaller cost they'll pay is to help incent them to want to be a, a peer roommate, a housemate for those individuals. But we
Mhm.
also find that moms and dads, especially moms, there's a statistic that's pretty sad about the divorce rate for families that have neurodivergent children. Moms are looking to downsize and make that transition with their son or daughter as a
Mhm.
roommate until they move on, and then that would then get rented out to someone else. But we do think it's going to be less. And then, it depends upon the location of the house, size of the house, the amenities. But, for a neurotypical, it's going to be in the $18 to $2,000 a month because these are going to be really nice homes.
Yeah. And so if I'm a landlord and I own a house, let's just say that, again, I'm going to use the recovery and the residential assisted living
Sure.
moniker to a certain extent, which we have a ton of success in and which I do personally. So I can actually attest to this. You're usually doing a 5-year lease and you don't have to do anything with the house. And they're the best maintained properties because you have people there that are actually taking care of
Yeah.
the property on a daily basis. Is that what you guys are doing? You're doing a 5-year lease. You're taking it, and then you're basically divvying it up, and you're putting the families in place, and they're coming in, and you're just doing that.
Exactly. This first property, we've had someone that has offered to buy it for us and lease it to us for 5 years with an option to renew for 5 or purchase. Right. So that's
There you go.
exactly the model we're going into today.
All right. So if you are a investor and you're doing well in your real estate, and you're realizing that it's not enough just to be a landlord. You want to actually do something that affects society. Or, a lot of folks, again, I have recovery housing, residential assisted living, veterans housing, you fill in the blank. Let's add in neurodiverse living into that. And you can reach out and you can learn more about it at Front Porch Cohousing. Reach out to Jim and Diane. They could talk directly to you guys, right?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
And if that's you and you're willing to lease a property to this organization so that they can turn around and help out these people, you guys have a lot, like, you guys have a waiting
We
list.
do.
It just seems like a
We
no-brainer.
do.
If I was there, I would say, especially if I have a bigger house, hey, yeah, here, 5 years, knock yourself out. And as a landlord, that would seem to be, um, my experience is that it's so much easier than having tenants that leave every year.
I think we'll be great tenants because our families want longevity, right? They don't want 2 years, 5 years. They want 10, 15 years, right? So we are
Mhm.
going to actually, interestingly, we've turned down a seller, a landlord, because he only wanted to rent to us for a year. And we said,
Yep.
no, our minimum's 5, and we want the option to renew or to purchase. And they said, we'll rent it to you for a year. And we said, no, thank you.
Wow. Okay. So there's that side of it.
Yeah.
So people should, if you're interested in learning more about what these guys are doing and you want to do it in your neck of the woods, if you're in Washington State or you're in Nevada or whatever, and you say, hey, you know what? Same
Yeah.
situation. I have a relative, maybe it's a son, daughter, maybe it's a niece, nephew, maybe it's somebody that family that and you say they're in this situation. This is what I'd like to do. You guys have already done all the vetting out. You know what kind of houses, you know what the numbers look like. Will you be willing to help that individuals or those individuals if they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Interesting you mentioned that. About 2 weeks ago, a mom that's been following us for months, I thought being interested in our area, she actually lives in North Jersey and she wants
Mhm.
to hire us to consult with her to do what we're doing.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And you guys are a
we're
nonprofit,
a nonprofit.
right? Like this isn't something you're like, hey, I got something up my sleeve. This is, I
No,
think we can all agree that when you've been personally affected by things, that it tends to take the money out of the equation. But you know that there's a need, and we still need
yeah,
those individuals who are well heeled to go out there and put their money where their mouth is and say, hey, I want to affect change. This is an easy way to do it, and it's still profitable,
yeah.
right? So,
And even if they're not interested in purchasing a house or doing any of that, probably I think the stats are, 1 in 4 people are disabled. So probably all of your listeners know at least someone
Yeah.
who is either a caregiver of somebody with a disability or with that. And I mean, like, we would always welcome any sponsoring
yeah.
of individuals that are going to be living with us. Any of that we would be very, very appreciative of.
Diane, I want to explore that for a second. So you can sponsor a family, right? You can go in there and you could say, you got 147 people right now that need housing. The families they're not getting aid.
Nope.
They're not getting anything from anybody else. And we want to help transition them into a property. So you could either be the landlord, you could do that, you could just, but what if you just wanted to help and you said, you know what? I want to help one family. Can they do that with you guys? Can they sponsor? And if so, is there a link I could put up? Is it how do I learn about that?
Well, Jim is the master of the website and the links, so he'll have to give that to you. But absolutely, there is a way to do that, and our families would really appreciate it. $2,400 might not sound like a lot of money, but it is a lot of money for a lot of people. And to come up with that every month, we would love to have a sponsorship program. Anybody who sponsors an adult would hear from them, would definitely get updates, all kinds of information, and whatever information they would want to get. We could certainly make sure that happens.
So if you're a church, a group, or something like that, and you say, hey, you know what? I want to sponsor some people in my community. I want to sponsor a home. I could do it. Any level, like $50 a month, something like that, or all the way up to, hey, I could sponsor the house, or that, hey, maybe you're a social worker or you're somebody with the state and you say, you know what, we could devote funds to this. All comers, could they all come in and help you guys out?
Yeah, absolutely, Toby. On our website, frontporchcohousing.org/support/sponsor, there's the opportunity to make a one-time donation of any amount, a monthly donation of any amount. And actually, the monthlies would be wonderful from that sponsorship standpoint. There's a $2,500 monthly option there, ironically, with our cost being $2,400 to
That would
sponsor
take care
an
of a family.
autistic adult. So sponsoring someone for 6 months or 12 months would be a blessing. The other thing I don't want to lose sight of, as a nonprofit, an IRS recognized nonprofit, we have the ability to accept land. If someone has a parcel of land that they no longer need, want, or looking for the tax deduction on that, we can take that land and then we'll use it to build more housing. We can also take any type of real estate, and those forms are on our website as well. The best way, if someone has an interest, is send it to Jim at frontporchcohousing.org, and I will answer any and all questions about sponsorship, buying a house, donating land. We can take any motor vehicle that people no longer need or want. We can take it, we can sell it, and those funds will go back to support our residents that need help.
And so you guys are just doing everything you can
Mm-hmm.
to actually create, hey, we're not just creating housing for neurodivergent adults. You're creating community with both neurodivergent adults and neurotypical regular folks so that we can address this issue. I just looked at your website. 4.5 million people in the United States are autistic. I know that it's increasing.
Yep.
Everybody can have whatever idea of why. Maybe it's just being diagnosed now. Maybe there's something that's more insidious, whatever the case. But we know it's an issue. And then here we have parents of their children, and they want to make sure that, like any parent, is what happens if I'm gone or not able to? What if I get sick? What if I just, it's got to just, it does it weigh on you guys? Is that something that's in the back of your heads that and is that what all these families are dealing with?
Well, it certainly weighed on my mind and Nancy's mind when Michael graduated and we started looking for long-term, lifelong housing for him. And in Pennsylvania, there is none. So, Diane said best case, Nancy's sister would take Michael, but she's older than Nancy. So what happens, you kick that proverbial can down the road as often as you can, and then you're left with an untenable situation. What do I do now? So we decided that we would take that bull by the horns and create it so that we didn't have to worry about it. And now I think it's just catching on like wildfire because every parent we talk to, what do I do when, is the common theme across all 140 some families.
And
It's
it's a big
inevitable.
project, right? We all worry about it.
We all worry
but
about it.
It just came together that we got together and were able to, work with all of these families to come up with a solution because, it's very daunting to think about, it happening on your own. So a lot of times you don't really think of, Scarlett O'Hara, I'll think about that tomorrow. But tomorrow eventually shows up.
Yeah.
Let's do it today.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you guys for joining me today.
Thank you.
I get to talk to folks all the time, and I'm a tax lawyer, right? So I have I'm usually on the tax side and doing some asset protection. Every now and again, we touch on a topic that I think is really important that usually resonates with our folks. Like I'm always shocked at how many people end up on our recovery housing and doing transitional housing for inmates and all that. There's a big group of people out there who have real estate and stuff, and they realize that they don't want to just do monetarily well, but they want to do socially well. And this sounds like an opportunity for somebody to go into an area that has a definite need that's not being met at all. Like this is, until I met you guys, I'd never heard about this. I had run across once where I rented to an organization, and again, they were kind of like, "Hey, we have a caregiver in there," and yada yada yada. But I never really thought about it for 2 seconds until you guys made it clear, and I did not know how big an issue it is. I bet you that most people out there listening did not realize how large of an issue. And if it's an issue, it's an opportunity for us to solve. And if you want to be part of that solving, go to frontporchcohousing.org. I'll put the link up.
Yeah.
I'll put all your guys' links up, and I'll make sure that we're pointing it out. You know what? I just want to thank you guys both for coming in. Any last thoughts? Anything else that you guys want to say before we're gone?
Well, I think, Toby, one other thing, just to put this in perspective, if we had 20 homes today, 20 properties, we still wouldn't have enough in our neck of the woods. So we're doing one, just got under contract. And if we had 20 places where families knew that they could have a safe, sustainable place for their child to have an inclusive, independent life, we'd sell out in a heartbeat. It's just amazing how dramatic this issue is. Diane, what are your closing thoughts?
Oh, I just want to say thank you so much,
Yeah,
Toby,
of
for
course.
having us on, because it is, it's interesting that for such a big problem, there's not a lot of talk about it. So thank you very much,
Yeah,
and
thank
we
you.
really appreciate you giving us a chance to talk about what we're doing.
Hey, we're going to get the word out. And if there's one thing I know, it only takes one or two good investors to say, you know what, this is something I want to address and I want to commit myself to. And you can see some pretty amazing change. I always bring up Frank and Sherry and Michelle and some of these, some names you guys probably know who I'm talking about, and Gene and his whole family, rest his soul. Gene's gone what now, but his family's carrying on. And they're doing all these amazing things to help effectuate change. And it doesn't take that many people to have a huge impact. And so I hope in 5 years we're saying, hey, remember that time that you guys first came on, and there's Diane and there's Jim. We made an issue aware,
Yeah,
and then you see something take off, and hopefully that this is one of those occasions, and we'll come back and we'll look at this and say, what an amazing thing you guys started. So
thank you, Toby.
Thank
I'll
you.
do my part. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
Bye. Happy holidays.